Oh, my name is Rabbi Rubenstein. I am originally from Glasgow in Scotland, but I live in New York um, for the moment. We're shortly moving to Ireland. So you should be used to my accent, which people in America are not. So I've got 6 questions here. I've got 12 altogether. I thought it would be a good idea to do six first, and then we'll do another six. So we are all in the same boat. I am personally involved with 4 organizations, including this one. And then there's something called Links in America, which is the biggest organization for young adults and teens who've lost a parent. There's one called Pillars, equally good, does the same job. Makini in England, and of course, this. So I should let you know that I've written a book on this subject, which just came out just about 2 months ago. And you can see it's called Avi Yisomim, because Hashem calls himself the father of orphans. And then the English title is Never Alone, the book for teens and young adults who have lost a parent by, see, it is me. And so basically, the reason I wrote this book was because I'm very often asked to answer questions like these that I'm about to read to you. And it's obviously important to hear the answers, and the questions are yours. So let me start. And I've got 6 questions here, but before we start, I'm going to tell you some, I think, incredibly important things for you to know. When my late wife was diagnosed with cancer, she was ill for 5 years. When she was diagnosed with cancer, this was a message that I got from a very good friend of ours called Rebbitzin Liebe Gottlieb, or Lehashon. And she sent us a message which said the following thing: keep an idiot book. Keep an idiot book. She said lots of very, very nice and very kind and well-meaning people will say some ridiculously stupid things to you. Now, instead of being upset, you keep an idiot book. Now, I don't think you actually have to write it down in an idiot book. What you have to do instead is simply to make a mental note that this is a really stupid comment. So instead of being upset, you actually laugh quietly to yourself. I'll give you an example. Right at the beginning of my wife's illness, a lady, who was a very nice lady, really is a very nice lady, came up to my wife on the street and she said, she was from Europe. I won't say which part of Europe. She had a foreign accent. She said, "What sort of cancer do you have?" So my wife told her, my late wife told her what sort of cancer she had. She said, you know, Mrs. Cohen had that disease, and she got a bracha from a tzaddik that she should live long enough to see all her children married underneath the chuppah. Why are you marrying your children off so quickly? Wow! The new number one in the idiot book. And instead of being upset, we laughed. I mean, it was a ridiculously stupid question. She didn't mean it to be. She wasn't trying to be hurtful. It was hurtful, except that we were keeping an idiot book. So she just went into number one. Now, there's many, many more idiot comments that came along that pushed her off the number one position. But it's a very good tactic, particularly for people like those watching this who are going through tough times. Keep an idiot book. And incidentally, it's for you now, it's good. It's also good for all of us to keep an idiot book for the whole of life. Because even when you're not as wounded and vulnerable as you obviously now are, but just generally in life, people will say incredibly stupid things to you. So I think it's a good idea to keep an idiot book. But that's a serious point, because some of the questions here will require you to have an idiot book. Number 2, be gentle with yourself. Give yourself a break. I remember just about 3 weeks before my wife passed away, and I was in a store in Manchester. We used to live in Manchester. And I was going along the store, putting stuff in my basket. It was a basket, it was a trolley. And somebody whom I knew very well walked past me, and he said, "How are you?" And things were really bad. I mean, I knew we were coming to the end of that particular horrible journey. And I said to him, "Really awful." And he said, "Baruch Hashem," and walked on. because people often ask you, but they're not listening. They're just being polite, which was fine. But very often, I thought I was doing well, Baruch Hashem, both before my wife passed away, after my wife passed away. It's just that then somebody said something, or something happened, which was small, nothing, as they say in Yiddish, a Kleinigkeit, an absolute minuscule thing. But it upset me hugely, or I lost my temper. And that's when I realized that I wasn't doing fine at all. Only thought I was doing okay. I wasn't really doing okay. And it takes a long time before you start to be doing okay. Now, I say I wrote a book on this, so and I beg you to buy it, not for me. I really couldn't care less about the money, but for you, I think here it sells for $20 or so. I hope it doesn't cost us any much more in the UK. But it's good to have a book that you can turn to. Oh, incidentally, I try and make people laugh in the book as well. So fine. Two important things. Give an idiot book. Be gentle with yourself. And as we'll see when we come to some of the questions, try and be gentle with idiots as well. Okay, fine. Let's get to question number one. So somebody said, I'm struggling. I don't know who it is. They're not signed. I'm struggling socially. And whenever I'm around friends, they're playing music and I feel embarrassed to tell them to turn it off. How do I approach this situation? Now, this is very hard. I'm guessing that's a girl. Don't know why. So let's call her Rochel. And so I'm guessing that Rochel is just in a lot of pain, obviously. And here we've got a situation where she doesn't really want to look like a Nebuch. None of us in that situation, when we are in that situation, want to feel that people are pitying us and being nice to us because it's the right thing to do. That's wrong. You don't want to feel that. You want to feel as good about yourself and normal as you can possibly do in an abnormal situation. So what you're going to do here is you're going to sort of say, switch off the music because, I'm an Ebach. Of course not. She wants to have self-respect and dignity as well. She should. So look, let's start with common sense. If you're going out socially with a bunch of friends and you know that they're going to be playing music, that's what the event's all about, then that's an event you skip. You don't need to be at that event. But if it's just generally a bunch of girls, I suppose guys as well, are getting together and they're going to be playing music, then you don't want necessarily to make yourself a never. What you should do, though, is to simply hint to somebody or get somebody to tell them. Because young people, forgive me, I mean, I used to be young, thousands of years ago, but young people are often simply not sensitive to the needs of somebody in pain because, thank God, everybody watching this is in the minority. We'll talk more about that later. But most people have no experience of this. So most adults, like that lady I told you about at the beginning, they've got no experience about this. And therefore, they say idiotic things. So you need to get somebody who's going to sort of say to them. And I'm sure you could find, a surviving parent, or maybe the parent of the host of the party, or somebody who can whisper it in the ear of the one person in the group who is the one with the seichel. Don't forget that Rochel, can't listen to music. And then that solves the problem. Don't you do it. Keep your self-respect. Let somebody who will never know that it came from you, that you're not experiencing discomfort from this, put that to them, and you'll find in actual fact they're probably all very nice kids. They're very happy to make sure that, you're as comfortable as possible. But there are some events that you just won't be able to go to because of music, and that's just part of the sad part of the beginning of the journey that you're on. I will get somebody else to let them know. That's question number one. Number two, some of my friends just completely ignore the fact I lost my parent. Well, this just relates to number one, doesn't it? People who don't know how to deal with people who are in pain. I really want to be able to speak to them about it because they're close to me. But because it's such a, says here, a hectic topic, I think it means a tender topic, perhaps. They seem scared to even acknowledge the fact that I lost my parent and never mind talk about it. Yes, of course. That's it. Whoever this person is, let's call him or her. Let's move over to a boy now. Let's call it Daniel. Daniel has put his finger on the point, on the nail, head on the nail. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. And you actually want to talk about this. Now, just bear in mind that the formula that applies for you won't apply for anybody else. That's very important. And I should also point out that all this pain that you're going through, one day you're going to be able to turn into advice that you can give to other people because you'll know the right thing to do that other people don't. But anyway, he wants to talk. Daniel wants to talk to these guys about his situation. And of course, it was Daniela. She wants to talk to her girlfriends about her situation. But they're scared stiff and they don't know how to broach it. In that case, you've got to break the ice. And it might well be the case, rather than sort of stand up in front of them and say, hey, listen here, I'd really like to talk about this, which will sound a little bit strange. But again, just take one person, not necessarily at that moment, but just if you're walking with home from school with one girl, one guy, and depending on which one you are, and you just basically tell them, I notice I've got a feather sticking out of here. That's interesting. Tell them, you start talking. Don't tell them I want to talk about this, is it? You know, I've been thinking about my mom a lot, or my dad a lot, whoever you lost. And then just start talking about it. They'll soon tell everybody else, you know, he or she is quite happy to talk about it. We had a very interesting conversation. Because they're bound to say to you, I didn't know whether you're comfortable with this. Bound to say that to you. And they say, oh yeah, I'm quite comfortable to talk about it. And that they'll also tell other people as well. So again, just tell you, again, same sort of formula as the last time. Find the one you think is the ones that the other will listen to, the ones that the other ones will respect, and let them know that you're comfortable talking about this, and you'll soon find everybody will talk to you about this. But there's no, in the classic question for you and I, people of faith, whether you're Jewish, non-Jewish, male, female, but is of course Tzaddik Araloi. Why did very bad things happen to very good people? That's the classic question. The best book I know that deals with this is a book called the Chovos Levovos, and in this chapter called Shar HaBetochen, and in chapter 3, and he goes through 5 reasons why a tzaddik might suffer and 6 reasons why a bad guy might prosper. And in beginning that analysis, he says something very interesting. He quite quotes all the greats of Klal Yisrael who struggled and were pained by the question of tzaddik v'raloi, including Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was upset when he saw the baby stuffed into the wall in Mitzrayim and says to Hashem, you can find this in the Chumash at the end of Parashat Shmos, Lama harayos lama zeh? Why have you done bad to the Jewish people? He can't find an answer to tzaddik v'raloi. And you can hear the Chovos Levovos gives lots of other examples of the greats of Klal Yisrael, David HaMelech, Habakkuk, other Nevi'im, who struggle with the question. And then he asks an interesting question on his own right. And he says, why is it that they all ask the question and don't give an answer? And he says, because there's not one answer that applies to everybody. Why one tzaddik is suffering and another tzaddik is not, why one evil person is prospering and another one is not, there's a specific reason for every single one. But that applies to your situation as well. The person who wants to talk about their parents is definitely going to be matched by another person who just lost a mother or a father who doesn't want to talk about it. And because we are not psychic, then your friends and maybe even your family just don't know. They're walking in eggshells, just like you would be in the exact same situation. And perhaps you were in their situation before you lost a parent, with one of your friends who also lost a parent. You just don't know what to do. So you've got to help them. And helping yourself, you're helping them, you're helping yourself. They just don't know what to do. You need this. Don't make yourself a never. You can be subtle about this. Just start talking about your parent, the parent who's passed away, to somebody you know in the group is key, the popular one, and they'll soon tell the rest that you're comfortable talking about that. And that'll solve the problem for you. 3, since I lost my father, my mother can't seem to cope. And I feel like I have to be there for my younger siblings and for my mom. but I can help everyone else whilst helping myself. What should I do? Help yourself. Unless you help yourself, you won't be able to help anybody else. I'm afraid that you come first. It's just that circumstances in this particular question tend to suggest that the other people, they're demanding that you help now when you've not been able to help yourself. Let me tell you a story. When I used to go, my wife had cancer, as I told you before. She was in the Christie's Hospital, Manchester's big cancer hospital. And many times I would, if it was a 2-day yontif leading into a Shabbos, many times I would stay with her in her room, literally sleeping on the floor, um, for 3 days, and I would get, that phrase cabin fever, when you just like, oh, after we made Havdalah, after Shabbos, after 2 days yontif in this little room. Then my one of my sons and one of my daughters would come and take over. And my late wife, Sean, was a very wise lady. He used to say, now go and look after yourself. I needed to go and recharge my batteries before I would be coming back and spending hours in the same room again. And I used to go to Chester, which was nearby, and sometimes the Lake District. You just need to charge your own batteries. So in this case, it might be that the demands on you are not giving you the chance or the opportunity to look after yourself, but that's a mistake. You're going to have to fight for that. And if everybody's taking from you and you're not able to prioritize yourself, you're going to have to find ways to do it. And it might be that you'll have to speak to other people in the family, uncles, aunts, mothers, or I don't know who's passed away. Who passed away here? Okay, it was your father. The father passed away. Okay, so you're going to have to speak to either your father's brothers and sisters or your mother's brothers and sisters. Again, discreetly. Normally, there's a key guy, a key uncle, a key aunt who's again a bal or bala seiko, and say, I really need a bit more support because I'm drowning here. So that they're the person that comes to let you get out enough time for yourself. You've got to look after yourself. If you're not looking after yourself, you'll not be able to look after other people. Looking after yourself doesn't mean it's a completely, selfish endeavor. And 100% of the time you're looking after yourself. No, of course not. But you've got to look after yourself enough to be able to look after other people too. That's not selfish. That's just simply the same way as we breathe in order to be able to move, same way as we eat in order to be able to live. You need rest and recreation to be able to exert yourself when you're helping other people, where it's physically strenuous and certainly when it's psychologically strenuous. Okay, number 4. I think this one's a boy. Some of my friends have just been so pathetic when it comes to the loss of my parent. Sounds like a boy. That I feel angry at them. Do I have a right to be angry? I know they don't know what I'm going through, but it doesn't take the anger away. It's definitely a boy. Speaking as an ex-boy, boys have temper problems. It's just the way we're made. It's more of a struggle. So we'll call him David. David, don't be upset with yourself for having a temper and being a normal person, and the fact that people drive you crazy. And as I said before, I very often found myself, when I thought I was doing well, I wasn't doing well at all. I don't know how long ago it was that you lost your parent. I don't want to get anybody depressed here. They say 5 years before you fully go over this. 5 years. But it will get better. It'll get progressively better. But still, you'll find at some time you're so wounded and you're so hurt that even when you think you're doing well, you're not. And boom, the explosion comes. So let's see if we can work through some tactics that might work for you. Some of my friends have just been so pathetic when it comes to the loss of their parent, and I feel angry at them. Do you have a right to be angry? I know they don't know what I'm going through, but it doesn't take the anger. And you don't specify exactly how they're being pathetic. Now, it could be what we've just already covered. They don't talk about it. They do talk about it. They are pretending too much that there's nothing wrong with you. They are so obvious that they think everything's wrong with you. It could be, look, it's the idiot thing, but it's also, you've got to cut them some slack. They just don't know. I've really got to, as we said before, a little bit of education. You're bound to have a best friend. For the best friend, you can say, don't say, the rest of the guys drive me crazy because that just means they will be too wary and too scared of saying anything that might just be the wrong thing. But you can help your key friend to let the rest of the guys know what works for you, what's your triggers and which triggers to avoid. That would be a clever tactic. We seem to be finding a common denominator running through all the answers here. Number 5 is an interesting question. I'm really stressed for exams, and I'm also just so stressed, anxious, and depressed in general since my dad's passing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I should push myself to do well in school when I'm in such a state. Well, you can push yourself to. Well, let me tell you an interesting thing. I heard this once from a very good friend of mine. He was a Baal Tshuva, and he wanted to go to the yeshiva I went to, which was Gateshead Yeshiva, and he asked for a letter from a famous rabbi in London called Rabbi Halpin. He's a tzaddik Kodesh Devrocha. He's also a rabbi of mine and was the greatest mind I ever met. So my friend said he'd like a letter from him to get into this yeshiva. That's Gateshead is, you probably know Gateshead's a serious yeshiva and pretty advanced. And he was a Baal Tshuva, so he wasn't quite there in learning standard. So Rabalta said to him in his German accent, he had a little bit of a lisp. He said, you'd be better getting a letter from a psychologist to say you're normal. In case you didn't get it, I'll do it again. You'd be better getting a letter from a psychologist to say that you're normal. And he said, because the Rosh Yeshiva will be scared that you, who are a Baal Tshuva and new to all this yeshiva world, the stress of sitting and learning all day long will, you won't be able to hack it, to crack it. You'll have a breakdown. But then he said, but you should know this was stuss, but it's nonsense. So because if you're balanced, no matter how much stress you're put under, you won't crack. And if you're not balanced, no matter how little the stress, you will. What did that mean? He said, so, well, if you're balanced, let's say this guy, new to learning, he's in yeshiva, and of course you're learning the very, very, very I'm sorry, there was a tiny little break there. I don't know if you noticed that, but somebody came to the door, and the dog we're looking after for our neighbor started going bonkers and barking, so I paused. Let me take up from where I think I left off. So he said, if you are balanced, you'll not crack, and if you aren't balanced, no matter how little the stress, you will. Because if the boy, the Baal Tshuva, he's not used to this very, very long day, sitting there and then he gets to the yeshiva, starts at 7 o'clock in the morning and ends about, midnight. Then if the person is balanced, he'll say, it's too stressful for me. And off he'll go and get a bit of a break. And if he goes back and it's still too stressful, so he'll cut out one of the Siddharim instead of learning all day, maybe in the evening, and then he won't have an evening seder, he won't learn in the evening. And if that's no good for him, then he'll say, okay, to be a yeshiva guy to learning 24/7 is not for me. I'll just get a nice career and build a nice Jewish family, a balabos, learn Mishnayos, and nothing wrong with that. Because he's balanced. Whereas somebody who's not balanced, he'll take on more and more and more until you make sure that he cracks. So basically, I think it's very similar here. I'm really stressed and stressed for exams. I'm also stressed, anxious, and depressed in general since my dad's passing. I don't know if I should push myself to do well in school, and why am I in such a state? Well, why you're in such a state? There's an expression over here in America which I've been trying to master, but they say I don't do it properly. But it goes like this: duh. Why in such a state? You've just suffered the worst possible thing that could ever happen to a young person. You lost a parent. That's why you're in such a state. Should you push yourself to do well in school? Will it give you pleasure? Will it give you a sense of achievement? Will it help you to go over it? If the answer to those is yes, then of course you should push yourself. If you're pushing yourself and it's something you can't deal with at the moment, well, just push yourself to do it as well as you can. Here's a phrase that my sister-in-law uses. She's an older lady now, which is very wise, and I think it's a great phrase. Optimum, not maximum. Optimum, not maximum. It's a very, very brilliant observation. I don't know if you ever see the Olympic Games. I fly around the world speaking, so I tend to be sitting in the airport lounges about to get in flights. Usually get big TV screens. Every 4 years is the Olympic Games. If you see the Olympic Games, you see, the elite runners for the 100 meters race. These people, these guys, or the women's race, I suppose, as well. No, I think I've only ever seen a man's race. But you got, I think, it's 10, 12 lanes, elite guys have been training for a whole year, 4 years for this moment. They're on the starting block, Sunday fires a gun, pew, and off they go. And they're trying to shave off a millisecond of what the previous guy did. At the end of it, they break through the finishing line, and then they're standing there panting and puffing. Some are holding onto their waist because they got stitched inside. Some actually fall down and collapse. They have to be evacuated in the stretcher. It's actually the most entertaining bit to watch. And that's that. Now, in the exact same Olympic Games, there's something called the marathon. The marathon is 26 and a quarter miles, if I remember correctly. 26 and a quarter miles. And there you've got, again, elite athletes who run the marathon. But they can do 26 and a quarter miles, whereas these guys can give 100 meters and they're toast. They're finished. That's it. They're falling over. They have to be evacuated to an ambulance. What's the difference? Well, you can give your all, the maximum you could possibly give for a very short space of time, and then you finish. Or you can pace yourself. Pace yourself, pace yourself. And then you can do 26 and a quarter miles. I think the answer to that question is pace yourself. What's good for you? We're talking about what's good for you. You've got to look after yourself first. So can you push yourself to be the best in school? And that's going to give you all those positive reinforcements we talked about before, pride in what you're achieving, etc., etc. Or if you just can't, then give as much as you can, but give. Don't let this swallow you up. You talk about depression. I generally find that when I write books, I just showed you one of my books, but I think I'm writing book 14 at the moment. I do most when it's a normal school week, when I'm teaching yeshivas and teaching seminaries and lecturing here and lecturing there. After this, I'll be driving away to lecture in Queens, and I'm busy. When I'm busiest is when I achieve most. Last week, Hanukkah and so on and so forth, there was no school. It was a very lazy week. I thought, wow, plenty of time to. I did very little. Sometimes you achieve, in fact, in my case, I achieve most when I'm busiest. So never allow yourself to be too unbusy. Is there such a word as unbusy? For too long. It's not good for you. Depression, dangerous place. Don't go there. Keep yourself challenged. Keep yourself busy. Give optimum, not maximum. And number 6, I feel like everyone is written here in big letters. Everyone forgets that she died, sometimes even me. But then at times I just feel so vulnerable. I miss her so much. Why is this? I think it's a girl again. We'll call her Devorah. Well, Devorah, the reason that, sometimes you miss her so much, and then sometimes it's almost as though you put her out of your mind, is because Hashem has got this brilliant kindness thing going on, because everything from Hashem is ultimately kind, even though we don't see it at the particular time. He allows us to forget. Were we to bear and sustain the degree of pain that we felt in the first few months, first days, first weeks, first months, after the loss of a parent, after the loss of anybody whom we loved, in my case, a wife, then we would be finished. But we know that time is a healer. And how it heals is because the natural facility within our minds is to, as it were, not concentrate on all the time and move on to embrace other things. And eventually, if you're a woman, a young woman, a young man, whom you're going to marry and have your own children. If you're a young man, a young woman, you're going to marry and have your own children, which is very, very therapeutic. That's not giving up on your mother or your father when you move on to the next stage of your life. They'll come with you. You'll bring them with you. And you usually bring the best of them with you, because you will now appreciate what it is to be a parent. No, I don't think you are there's anything to feel guilty about this. Let me give you one last idea before we finish. I told you before, I mentioned before, the book's got a chapter on guilt. It's called Good Guilt, Bad Guilt. Here's the general rule. You're going to be filled with all sorts of regrets and distress about the things that you did in your relationship with your parent. It's an absolute guarantee that you were sometimes you were bad tempered and sometimes you were chutzpahdik and sometimes you were cruel and sometimes you were callous and that's going to here's the deal. If guilt makes you change and become a better person, it's good guilt. That's guilt that comes from up there. If guilt doesn't make you become a better person, just destroys you, convinces you're a terrible person and pulls you down, that's bad guilt and it comes from down there. It's not Hashem making you a better person, it's the Satan making you to try to destroy you as a person. So bad guilt, always to be avoided. Good guilt, you can embrace that. To learn from it, to regret it, and make sure you don't repeat it is a very healthy process. The fact that you sometimes forget the pain that you've gone through, that's a gift from Hashem. That's good, nothing to be guilty about. Right? If you were to ignore your mom or your dad, whoever it was that passed away, not care about them, well, that's something. That's a different discussion, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about just, it looks as though you've just started to embrace normal life a little bit. And that little bit's making you feel guilty. Oh, that's making you feel guilty. That's making, normal's making you feel guilty. It's coming from there. It's guilt. Sorry, guilt is only good if it comes from there. And I don't see any guilt at all that's available here in this story when it's only the normal process that Hashem allows you to start to recover from the blow that you've just experienced. That's our first 6 questions, 6 answers. I really hope they're helpful. I don't know where this is going out to. I think chiefly in England, maybe it travels further. That book, let me recommend it to you again. I hope it helps and heals. Then you'll get that. It's in England, it's now in Israel, and of course in the United States and Canada, where it came out first. It's available there too. I will be answering another 6 questions very shortly, but let's put these online. I'd be interested in your feedback, and I really sincerely hope that some of the things I've said have been helpful. Take care.